Do you love the Pestilence, but you don't know if the Pestilence loves you back? Every time you shoot it and see those Plagued Outcast ticks, you fall in love. But then you get hit with the Rude Awakening when you receive all those medical bills from all of the outcasts that you've spread the plague to. And now that you're broke, you're still wondering if the OG Pestilence build that I've been pushing down your throats is still the goated build, or is the new Concentrated company going to be goated? Well, Dags, agents, community members, I'm going to give you my honest 2 cents about the new set and how I would run it. We're going to find out if Concentrated Company has the juice to dethrone the goated build that I've been running for the last 2 years. Did I just respawn again? What's going on, Dax? If you're new to the channel, welcome to Daddy Game Gaming. I'm your host, Knox, where my favorite thing to do is respawn, and it's not because I'm good. Welcome to the new Year 7, Season 3, The Mutiny. I'm sure there's a lot to be said about the new season and the launch and the companions, but as of right now, let's just stick to what this video is, and this is going to be seeing if my goated Pestilence build is still goated. I'm going to be comparing my OG build against the Concentrated Company using 3 different loadouts, well, 3 different pieces between Turmoil knee pads, Overdogs, and the Backbone backpack, while of course still using the Sacrifice chest piece because you already know my favorite thing to do is respawn. And as always, the goal of the OG Pestilence build is to take damage. And the good thing about the new gear set is that it does work with the Plagued Outcast ticks, unlike Strikers or Heartbreakers. And literally, if you look at my channel, the majority of my builds and my live streams is using some variant of the Pestilence build, have it be tanky or just straight DPS, with my favorite being my OG goated build. So I'm going to go through the comparison pretty quick. I'm not going to showcase all the damage numbers in the shooting range. You can see them on my live that I did, but I did put together a chart, and then I'm going to go through the build breakdowns and see if it's worth using. So here's the chart, and a little bit before we get into it, yes, the Concentrated Company has a bug right now, which is only a visual bug. You'll see the icon pop up for the gear set, but you won't see the stack bar. Don't worry, even though you don't see the bar, it is still stacking and your damage is still going up. But if you want to see the actual bar, which I always want to see the actual bar so I know what stacks I'm at, just go into your inventory, remove one of the 4 pieces and re-equip it. See if the bar is there to show you the stacks. And when I did the testing, I took the damage numbers that apply to enemies with armor. I'm pretty much taking that top end that you're going to do because the majority of the enemies you're going to fight are going to have armor. And if they don't have armor like red bars, it doesn't really matter if you're doing less damage to them. Another thing to keep in mind, you don't have your companion technically with you when you're in the shooting range. So all those passive buffs are doubles. So the damage numbers are going to be a little bit less, and inside the shooting range we're not going to benefit from all the different buffs and talents and what have you and whatnot. And this is a very fair comparison because everything is done equally and the same, and I just took the damage numbers and I made it all into a nice little chart for everybody to see so you can make an educated comparison. So enough with the rambling, so let's get right into the chart. On the top left, I have my OG goated loadout, and for each section I'm going to include all the damage sources that are applied to the Plague of the Outcast, and I'm going to include the tick damage and the damage you actually do when shooting the Pestilence. So with my OG build, we got the Lengmo, Backbone, Overdogs, Turmoil knee pads, and the tick damage goes for 1.6 million up to 2.1 million, and that just has to do with the priority targeting from the Overdogs. And then for the shots, we're hitting for 530k times 2 for a total of 1,060,000. And the reason why I like my OG goated build is because I really like using Overdogs pretty much only with the Pestilence because it does work with the Plague of the Outcast ticks. And another big benefit is having the Turmoil knee pads Bewildered talent, and with the Bewildered talent you're going to evenly kind of damage the whole playing field with all the enemies in range. And when you have the Plague of the Outcast fully stacked up, it's literally just going to run through all the enemies because they're already all weakened. And also with the Terminal knee pads, a lot of the tier 3s for the Overdogs is going to be like snipers, it's going to be skills and stuff like that, really squishy stuff for the most part. So being able to shoot one enemy and take out other squishy enemies thanks to the Bewildered talent is actually going to boost your damage because you're going to end up clearing out the bottom tiers for Overdogs, and you're going to get to tier 2 quicker, you're going to get tier 1 quicker. And that is why I like my goated OG build, because it's very convenient, easy to play. It's like lazy mode pretty much, to shoot tanky targets and everything else dies on the map. And once the tanky target dies, that Plague of the Outcast, hopefully fully stacked, is going to go and run rampant on the rest of the enemies that are already weakened and low. Now for the top right, we're going to have Concentrated Company with Turmoil knee pads. As before, I listed the damage sources. We get that 185% weapon damage, we get that 70% crit damage, which is different versus the OG build, and we also get that 30% weapon handling, which is actually pretty nice for the Pestilence, but I want to see that 30% weapon handling is going to make me want to use this version with the Turmoil knee pads versus the OG goated build with the Turmoil knee pads. Just comparing the damage numbers, you can see that we're ticking for almost 1.8 million. And the shots are 465 times 2 for a total of 930,000. So we are hitting a little bit less, but one of the big benefits of using Turmoil knee pads with the concentrated company, like I said, you do get the 30% weapon handling, but those damage levels are always consistent and always going to be that. And you don't have to worry about the Overdogs 30% amp tier stacking damage. So when comparing this loadout versus the OG goated loadout, it's going to be kind of like, hit or miss. I'm still leaning more towards the goated build just because we do have that chance to do a little bit more damage and we don't have to worry about the stacking. And when it comes to that 30% weapon handling, it is nice, but that 30% weapon handling honestly isn't game breaking. Because for the most part, the big chunk of your damage is going to be coming from the Plague of the Outcast ticks, and the Plague of the Outcast doesn't care about weapon handling. And for this loadout, you can play it wherever you want, but I would mainly probably stick to heroic and below content for this specific loadout. You can play it in legendary. I did test this build in legendary. It does just fine. Another big benefit of the concentrated company is that it is a whole lot easier to farm for versus the OG goated Lengmo build. So if you're a new player and you're watching this and you already have a pair of the Turmoil knee pads, definitely go with the concentrated company. It's going to be easier to farm for, and then you can slowly work your way to farming those 3 Lengmo pieces that are a lot harder to farm for. Now for the bottom right, we're going to have concentrated company with the backbone backpack. And if you wonder why not Petrov with the unstoppable talent, just know that the backbone 35% total weapon damage actually nets a little bit more damage than a Petrov, which gives you 10% LMG damage and then 25% total weapon damage. So I would recommend you go with the backbone backpack if you have it, because you're going to get 35% total weapon damage, plus you're going to get 20% explosion resistance. Definitely a win-win right there. And now this is when the concentrated company starts looking a little bit better than the OG goated build, because we are getting that 20% weapon handling. We are going to be doing that 2 million tick damage, and we are going to be hitting for that 1.1 million shot damage. And directly comparing this loadout with the backbone versus the goated OG build, this right here is starting to make me really like concentrated company. You do get the 30% weapon handling, and unlike the OG goated build with the Overdogs, where the damage fluctuates depending if you're hitting the right tier, we're always going to be hitting the 2 million ticks. And the same thing with the shot damage, we're always going to be hitting that 1.1 million, unlike with the OG build with the Overdogs that hits up to the 530,000 depending if you're hitting the right tier. It's starting to become a whole lot harder to justify the OG build being the top tier #1 goated build. Now for my 2 cents about this, yes, you do a whole lot more damage. It's a lot more consistent. You have the weapon handling, but you don't have Turmoil knee pads. And the only reason why I say that is because I really love running Turmoil knee pads with the Plague of the Outcast and the Pestilence, because I want to keep beating the dead horse. You shoot one enemy, deal damage to the rest of the map, get them low. Once the enemy dies that you build up the Plague of the Outcast stacks on dies, that fully stacked or almost fully stacked Plague of the Outcast is going to go and clear the map. And this loadout with the backbone is going to be really good for legendary content. It's going to be really good for heroic content as well, but I would honestly still prefer having a loadout with Turmoil knee pads, especially for heroic and below content, just because having Turmoil knee pads just makes it super easy and fast and efficient farming heroic and below content. I cannot stress that enough. The OG build is just a lazy mode for heroic and below content that does really well in legendary content as well. So let me know which one you would prefer, the concentrated company backbone or the OG goated build. Now finally, the bottom left, we're going to have concentrated company with Overdogs, and this is where you see some crazy damage potential. You can see that the ticks are from 1.7 million up to 2.3 million, which is ridiculously crazy. Our shot damage is going to be up to 1.15 million, and with all that extra damage, we're also going to get that 30% weapon handling. And this is where it starts becoming a little bit harder to justify which one is better, this loadout or the OG goated build. I won't beat a dead horse too much with this, because the comparison to the OG build is going to be the same with using concentrated company with the backbone versus the OG goated build. So a more fair comparison is going to be comparing concentrated company Overdogs versus concentrated company backbone. And yes, that 2.3 million looks really, really nice. And for these 2 loadouts, I'm going to predominantly play them in legendary content only, because like I said, I prefer having Turmoil knee pads when it comes to heroic below content. And this is going to be a realistic comparison from my own personal experience from running legendary content, and then comparing the damage numbers and stuff like that with the various people that I played with. And then quick summary, Overdogs versus Backbone, they're pretty much the same. I'm leaning more so towards the Backbone though. And the reason why I say that, while you do hit that 2.3 million, but for legendary content, you're not going to hit that 2.3 million as much as you think you're going to hit it. So if you actually look at the tiers for the Overdogs, the stuff that's in tier 3 is the stuff that likes to hide in the back on legendary missions, like the snipers. And then you have all those little drones flying around, right? And those are tier 3. So you have to kill those first to move up to tier 2, tier 1, right? And I can guarantee you right now that it is very unlikely that you're going to consistently, repeatedly, all the time take out all of the tier 3 enemies. And even with that being said, I guarantee you when a Chunga shows up, you are shooting a Chunga first on legendary content. You're shooting a Warhound first on legendary content. You are not trying to go take out all the little snipers and all the little drones flying around. You're taking out the biggest threats, and those threats are in tier 1, tier 2. So right there already for legendary content, you're already missing out on all that juicy 30% amp damage. And let's be real, and for me personally, I'm a very lazy, straightforward gamer. I go in there, I see enemies, I shoot them, I try to take out the reds first, I take out the threats that are pushing, I go for drone operators, I go for snipers when I can. But for bigger maps, especially like Tidal Basin and the zoo, guess what? You're never going to do that 2.3 million. Because like I said, you're not going to be able to efficiently, repeatedly, consistently take out the bottom tiers to work your way up. That's just unrealistic, so just keep that in mind. But if you're a god tier player, I'm jealous of you and hats off to you. You will definitely be enjoying that 2.3 million. And with that rent being over and being said, and then with that being said and the rent being over, you are still hitting respectively, so don't get me wrong. The damage fluctuations with Overdogs does normally average out when you look at the stats at the end of the mission. Now let's talk about that 2 million consistent tick damage that you're going to be seeing with the Backbone. It's just there, it's easy, it's right in the middle of the average for having the Overdogs. You're always going to get it. You don't have to sweat, just shoot the gun, build up your Pestilence stacks, take out threats that are pushing you, whatever, display the mission without worrying about looking where's that tier 3 threat, where's that tier 2 threat. Just shoot your gun and then hide behind cover while you're still doing tick damage. And before we move on, a couple of reasons why I like using Turmoil knee pads for legendary content. It's just because it's easy. If you watch me play, you'll see me just shooting, Warhounds. You'll see me shooting tanks. Because in legendary missions, the tanks don't care about cover. They just roll around in the middle, and they're easy targets. And the AI for legendary content, the enemies aren't stupid. They're not just running around. Majority of the time, they're in the back. They're spread out. They're trying to flank you. They're trying to surround you. They're always behind cover. They're shooting at you from behind cover, and you're not always going to have a target to shoot. So all those big damage numbers that you see with using, the Overdogs or Backbone loadout, you're not going to benefit from if there's nothing to shoot. Yes, you can shoot the tanks, you could shoot the Warhounds and stuff like that, but all the real threats are still hiding behind cover, shooting drones at you, putting down the support stations and what have you on legendary missions. But if you have Terminal knee pads, you could light up those tanks, you could light up those Warhounds running around in the open, you could light up the Chungas, you could light up those support stations underground. You could light up the drones that are flying around. And while you're lighting all of those targets up, half of that damage is bouncing around the map thanks to the Bewilder talent. And now you're damaging the drone operators, you're damaging the snipers, you're damaging the medics, you're damaging the freaking units that drop those support stations. So while yes, the loadouts with the Turmoil knee pads have a lower end damage, you actually end up doing the same or even more, I would say. For the most part, when I'm running my OG build and legendaries, I do more damage with that versus the other loadouts when I was playing, just because, like I said, you can consistently get DPS out on the map and more consistently take out the threats that are hiding in the back, the snipers, the drone operators, the medics, all that stuff. So that's my 2 cents about Turmoils on legendary missions, and while I think that it's really good, and that's why I still think probably the OG goated build is still going to be my favorite. So let me know what you guys think about these 4 loadouts and which one you would actually run and what your favorite one would be, and if anything that I just said makes sense, or if I'm just talking out my cheeks because I lost too many brain cells when I respawned about 12 million times making these videos. This is my goated Pestilence build I've been running around for like the last year and a half. It's going to be the gunner specialization. Of course, we got the Pestilence. Secondary can be whatever you want. Sidearm could be whatever you want. I like using the quick step. Running the 3-piece Lengmo with the Backbone, comes with perfectly unstoppable force. Here's the mask. And then here's the holster. I'm running the sacrifice because of the perfect glass cannon. This is going to amplify the damage you do when you shoot your gun and amplifies the damage of the ticks from the plague of the outcast. We got the Overdogs. It does the Talon's weakest link, and this talent does work with both when you're shooting the pestilence and with the ticks on the plague of the outcast gets amplified if you're hitting the right tier. And the reason why I really like this combo right here is because I'm using the Turmoil knee pads. When I'm shooting enemies, the bewildered talent is going to kind of spread out the damage. It's going to take out all the squishier units, which tend to be in tier 3 and tier 2, always allowing me to quickly hit the right tiers and do the most amount of damage. And then for the skills, if I'm running legendary content or doing like control points, I'll run the precision smart cover. And then if I'm running through missions and stuff like that, I'll just put on like a drone or whatever other skill. Then I'll run the hive, or I'll run like the booster hive or something like that to help with the weapon handling. So this season you could run with a companion, or you could take the companion off. And if I am running the companion, I'm going to have the assault one to give me that 15% damage target out of cover. And for the passes, I'm using the priority channel, shock, and advance. Then I'm going to have the command discipline because I want that damage target out of cover buff to last longer. And the whole goal is going to be for me to shoot the RPG as often as possible. That way I always have that 15% damage target out of cover. And you could also get away with this loadout without using the companion. Just turn them off because you're going to double all of your global passive modifiers. So we're going to have that additional 50% weapon damage, 20% more hazard protection, and then a 50% more skill efficiency. So either or will work. Just play the way you like to play. And then when it comes to the critical hit chance, critical hit damage, it doesn't matter where you place it. I got to a 54% crit chance, and I dumped the rest of the critical hit damage. And this is going to be the loadout that I would actually run for all heroic and below content. I would actually also run it in legendaries. This thing is just well rounded, does a lot of damage, and does the job what you want it to do. Comes to the new concentrated company set. I'm just going to call it the CC. Concentrated company is such a horrible name to have to say multiple times. Either way, so for the new set, I'm just going to call it the new set because the name it has is really awkward to say multiple times. It's a really good set. You can use it with any type of guns because you do get the 10% weapon damage and 30% weapon handling, which is much appreciated for the pestilence because it has horrible handling. And then it has that stacking weapon damage buff and the stacking critical hit damage buff. So when this fully stacked up, you're going to get 105 weapon damage and 70% crit damage. Diminishing returns on that is really bad. You're not actually going to do as much as you think. And then when you have the backpack talent, it's going to give you an additional 70% weapon damage, taking you to 175 weapon damage and a 70% crit damage. And like I said, the diminishing returns is really bad, and you're not actually going to do it that much more damage. So it's almost not worth running the backpack and just running a different type of damaging backpack. And I'll show you later on in a different loadout. And the same thing as before, it doesn't matter where you put the crit chance, crit damage. You're going to want to get to as close to 60% crit chance and dump the rest of the crit damage. And the same thing with the modifiers. If you're running with them, these are the ones that I'm going to be using because I want to rotate through the active modifier as much as possible to get that 15% damage target out of cover. It's not bad. I just thought it would be better than it actually is. So it's not horrible. It just could have been better. You know what I'm saying? And then the other ways you could run this set is by swapping these out, and then you could run it with the Overdogs, and then the damage range is going to be from 1.7 million to 2.3 million, just depending if you're hitting the right tier. And the main thing that I would really run this for is like legendary missions. I wouldn't run this for heroic and below content because you do lose out on not having Turmoil knee pads. And I personally would prefer to have Turmoil knee pads because it just makes farming open world content, especially heroic and below content, super fast and easy. And I would rather trade out some of that damage for the ease of just playing with the Turmoil knee pads loadouts. But if you want the highest possible damage, this is going to be the loadout. And like I said, tops up at 2.3 million. And the same as before, crit chance, crit damage, get to 60%. If you can, as close to 60% as possible, and dump the rest in crit damage. And the active modifiers are going to be the same as before. And if you want a well-rounded build that's always going to hit the same amount, which is going to be a little bit over 2 million a tick, this is going to be the way to go. And then when just loadout, you won't have to worry about, getting the right tier and whatnot. and you don't have to worry about going from like 1.7 to that 2.3 million. You're always going to hit 2 million, 2 million, 2 million, give it take a little bit if they have armor or don't have armor. The same thing as before. We're going to get the same crit chance, crit damage, get to as close to 60%, and dump the rest in the crit damage. And then the active modifiers, passive modifiers are going to be the same thing. And like I said earlier, you can unequip your companion if you want, and then you'll double your passive modifiers, because it's not too bad to get into additional 15% weapon damage, another 20% hazard protection, and another 15% skill efficiency. Is actually not horrible. And then for this loadout, you could play heroic build contact legendary as well. But like I said before, I honestly would prefer to run this loadout with the Turmoil knee pads, or my OG build with the Turmoil knee pads, just because it's just easier, do more damage, spread it out. Like the Outcast does sustain and bounce area around, but all 4 of the different loadouts are very viable and pretty much do the same thing. Alrighty, guys, I hope you guys liked the video. It took a lot of work, a long time to do, so make sure you drop a like, drop a comment below to show your support. That way it gets out to the community and more people can get their eyes on it. And also let us know which one you would prefer, because I think the OG Pestilence build is still king. The raw damage the OG build brings, the ease of playing with the Turmoil knee pads, the added damage of Overdogs. It also applies to the take damage of the Plague of the Outcast. That whole little wombo combo just has so much going for it that it makes running through all content super easy. Don't get me wrong, Concentrated Company is really good as well. It just has its own little strengths and weaknesses, and I wouldn't necessarily say it is above or below the OG build, but I still prefer the OG build. Just like I said, Turmoil knee pads are just too good to pass out. If you don't got the Turmoil knee pads, run Overdogs, run the Backbone. Those are very good, as you saw some gameplay and I talked about it. And either way, Dags, if you made it this far, always drop that like, comment below what you think, and if you're not yet subscribed, you know what to do. That is all for now. Happy farming. You already know my favorite thing to do is Delta 03, and it's not because I'm good.
Alert! Intercepting JTF radio traffic.